Hello ratbags, it's Jade. Welcome to a special video today, taking a look at some actual tech stuff. Steam Deck. If you're a survival fan, if you're a console fan, but you desperately want to play more of the games you see on PC, is it viable for you? Is it going to be something that you could maybe consider in the future? I should have maybe done this video a bit closer to when we got the announcements of it, but I want to see how much more info I could gain. And although I'm not a tech guy, I'm not about to start rattling off a bunch of stats and specifications. I'm trying to keep this quite simple because I am a bit of a caveman. I have always been when it comes to PC gaming. I want to keep it fairly simple about why I think you should probably look into getting a Steam Deck. And don't bother with a next generation console if you haven't got one already. And again, this is coming from a place of a survival fan where there's so much more choice, an indie fan where there's so many other games you can play and try on a PC that you may never get to experience on console, not for years and years. A glance at my channel over the last 5 years and you will see at least 60 to 70% of the gameplay recorded has been consoles. I started out covering Ark on just a console and that was it. I didn't really have a PC to do much else for a good couple years into my YouTube career. Since then I have expanded and I have covered pretty much every survival game that's released on PC in the last couple of years as well. But like I said, I feel better with a controller in my hand. I don't like keyboard and mouse because of the issues. And I know so many of you guys would love the ability to play some of these games. But for whatever reasons, whether it's limited space, whether it's the money involved in getting a PC, or simply, not being used to having a PC or using one, you guys prefer consoles. But you want the choice, you want the range of games that are available on PC. Now straight up, this isn't an advert for Steam Deck per se, but I did want to talk about what I think are the plus points of this and some of the negatives, and why if you're a serious survival fan especially, the Steam Deck may offer you an entry point into PC gaming that maybe wasn't really around. So leave a like, make sure you subscribe for the best in survival games content, news, opinion and guides. Let me take you through what I think about Steam Deck and why if you're a console fan, you should really look into it more. So Steam Deck actually published a facts and cues yesterday, and this was kind of what prompted me again to make this kind of video, as it gives some detailed information on top of what we'd already known. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of that though, let's actually digest why can't you just buy a PC? The common question that we'll see in the comments for some Chad who's a PC master wank race. If you go onto PC Part Picker, a great site that lists all sorts of available components, graphics cards that you can buy from all different stores and shops, and you can pretty much build a PC before actually spending money, see what other people's have recommended. I use this to actually create my own PC in the past, but effectively you'll see it. Some little dickhead is going to go, oh, you can build a PC for $500 man, why bother buying an Xbox Series X? When it's a lie. It's an outright lie. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago you could buy a PC for $500 and it might just about play some of the games on their lowest settings. But nowadays, modern day rigs, you're looking upwards of $1,000 to play some of the latest and greatest Steam games, and particularly survival. Now why is some limey using dollars? Well, basically 60% of you guys watching my channel are American or North American, so that's why I always use or reference dollars quite a lot. But with prices sky high at the moment for graphics cards as well as processors, of course, getting into PC gaming is incredibly difficult at the moment. It's probably the worst it's been. I spent way over the odds when I did eventually build a second PC for use for people in my family because of the prices involved. There's just a huge shortage in chips. That's why it's so hard to get hold of current actual brand new consoles as well. Then looking at shortages like these been running all the way up to the end of 2022. So sit the frick down if you're going to comment anything like just buy a PC. It won't save you money in the long run, not yet, and it might not necessarily save you money in the future, because that's one big plus point of consoles. You buy your system and for good and bad, that is a system that you'll have for up to 7 years possibly. Icarus is probably the hottest, biggest, newest survival thing, going to be launching on PC in November properly with all its betas open at the moment every other weekend. Now I'm using this example as a pretty off one because it is a high usage. What you basically need for this is more and above what I would say most games are running at. But if you want to play the recommended settings, they are saying you're going to need 32 GB of RAM, you're going to need one of the latest 3000 series graphics cards, and you'll also need a fairly new or recent processor. Of course you can run things on minimum, and I know certain players have had no problems at all running the game on medium or even decently high settings in some cases. But by and large it has faced criticism, and I've seen it myself across the forums, that a game like this, which is coming out in the near future, is quite high spec But that is the future. That is what a lot of these games are going to be running at in the next couple of years. And when you buy a PC, you want it to last a good 4 or 5 years and upgrading it over time. Once you've got the PC, sure, it may be easier to maintain over the next 6 or 7 years, but in reality, upgrading it, getting new graphics cards, new memory cards, it all becomes still much more expensive than owning a simple Xbox or PlayStation. But just for balance, on the other scale, a game like No Man's Sky that's procedurally generated, that has huge worlds that you can do all sorts of base building and travel the skies and the solar systems, it actually runs pretty decently. You don't need the most powerful PC, and that's because it was primarily built for PlayStation. Its minimum requirements are pretty old graphics cards at this point, the storage that you need is minuscule, and the memory, the 8GB RAM, I would say 16 is the sweet spot where most people will have their systems nowadays. So any game like Icarus that requires you to have 16GB or 32GB for recommended is a bit and above, but that is the future. So do bear in mind, I'm only taking a look at this video in terms of survival. There's a billion other games out there that will run perfectly fine on a low-end system. If you like RTS games, if you like smaller little indie platformer games, then finding a PC that you can maybe build for $700–800 will be perfectly fine for what you want. But obviously your survival fans mostly watching this, and so many of the big games that you play, you love, you like, they do require a little bit more under the hood if you want to play in a nice way. That said, Ark Survival Evolved still has some pretty good in terms of starting gear, in terms of PCs and what you can run it on. But at this point it is a 6-year-old game, so it should be that way. So you get the idea, there's a plethora of games that have wide-ranging minimum requirements and recommended, but the future is only getting bigger and you're going to need more better items to play them. But so many of these survival games do require a lot of RAM, they require a lot of memory, and they certainly require some decent graphics cards if you want it to look good. And if you're thinking of streaming or YouTubing as well, then you will need a fairly decent rig. So, okay Jade, you've told us enough that yes, lots of games basically need beefy systems. So how does the Steam Deck fit into this? Bear in mind, I'm not Tech USA, I'm just giving it my layman's approach to this. The system beneath these is a kind of equivalent to a PlayStation 4, maybe 5 or Xbox Series S at the moment. Both systems, deck and consoles, rely on SSDs now to get the most out of it. And they share a lot in terms of the architecture of their actual graphic cards or the graphic chips. The Steam Deck is effectively just playing a PC game in the palm of your hand. Albeit slightly bigger and chunkier, it's much bigger than the Switch, and reportedly it's heavier, and people will need to get used to the way that the controls are situated. But in all intents and purposes, it does offer supposedly all of the features that a PC can offer you. You will be able to play the list of games that I just went through, and you'll moderately get a good time with them. You'll be able to play the modded versions, and you'll also be able to operate other systems other than Steam with the Photon on Steam Deck. PC gaming was completely alien to me until I started becoming a YouTuber. It took me a long time to get used to it, but I understand where you're coming from if you're still hesitant about looking at PCs and stuff. And that's why I think that Steam Deck could be an opportunity for console fans who love survival, who love these types of games, and are sick and tired of seeing dodgy ports come to their systems. Well, you can go ahead and play it for reals. And I guess that's the main point of this. So many of the games I've covered over the last few years have been fantastic survival games on PC, utterly dogshit on console. Whether it's because of bugs, whether it's because of problems, whether it's because of just poor porting, rush jobs, not supporting the consoles after launch, not supporting them enough over time. This isn't all just on the devs, it is the way the industry works at the moment. Push it out, let's make some money, who cares what it actually looks like. That said, games that do concentrate on console first, like No Man's Sky, games that have put a bit more priority on console, even with their problems, like Ark, like Conan, like DayZ, they have obviously done much better, and console have generated millions of sales from. Ark Survival Evolved has about 9 million players on PC, it has about the same number across Xbox and PlayStation. There's big business in survival games on consoles, that's why I kind of also stuck with it for you guys so long. That's why I do my yearly list showcasing the best console survival games, and why I talk about the new games that are coming. We've all seen this year with the huge, massive rise of Valheim, how great it would be if you could possibly have a PC to play more. In my current top 50 survival games list, that was literally the 50 games. There was maybe 2 or 3 I could have possibly tried adding and trying to rank them as a survival game. That is it. That was the amount you've got on consoles. There's at least 100 on PC that I can rattle off the top of my head. I'll just scroll through my little list here. And some of these have been deserted, some of them have been abandoned, or they're completely finished and won't receive any more updates, etc. Or they're just simply bad games. But these are just the ones that I own. There's still a whole ton more that I haven't actually had a chance to sit through or go through. So to me, a Steam Deck is a no-brainer. There are some caveats with it though. It's not going to improve performance if you have it docked. If you've got a Nintendo Switch, you'll know that you usually get a graphical improvement when it's connected to your TV. That's not going to happen with the Steam Deck. It's not going to suddenly become more high res, not going to get 4K gaming out of it. It will still remain exactly the same, whether it's on the dock or whether or not it's on your TV. And yes, obviously you can connect it to your telly. There's no 2K, 4K, it's literally like an amalgamation 1280, 800. But the refresh rate is 60Hz, and that's what console fans have been crying out for years now, and we're only just achieving it with the next generation of consoles. They're not looking at this to be something that you'll upgrade all the time. You're not going to be putting a brand new graphics card chip in it or attaching one to it. And apart from SSDs and micro SDs, i.e. the memory that you put inside to run your games and store them, there really won't be that many upgrades coming for it over the next few years. They may offer different versions, like they've got ones that run with bigger memory at the moment, or ones that have special etched glass. But the point being that you're not going to necessarily have to feel like you need to upgrade your PC just to keep up with what's going on. Not every single game has been confirmed that will work on Steam Deck, but everything we've seen from some of the stuff they've been speaking about does kind of point to them actually having that kind of idea that using their Proton storefront or system, they'll be able to pretty much port most or majority of games over without much work from actual developers. The power consumption could possibly be a bit of an issue. It's maybe not going to run for like days, so you are going to have to plug it in quite frequently, and it is quite chunky, it is quite heavy. But if you're an avid gamer on mobile or your Switch, then you'll have got used to them kinds of issues where you need to plug it in regularly. It's completely touchscreen though. You will be able to use all 10 fingers to play on your 7-inch touchscreen. It's got its headphone jacks, it's got a Type-C port. You get the idea. All the kind of equivalents that you see either on mobiles or other handheld devices. It's not the first. There are plenty of handheld IE systems or PC systems out there. But some of them are made by companies that you maybe don't know enough about or can trust. That's not to say you can completely trust Steam on this front. They've tried this before when they tried to get into the console market by effectively making closed off PC systems. Back in 2018, it was pretty much the death of Steam machines. These had been announced a good few years before and they hadn't really taken off. Effectively, Steam wanted to cut out Microsoft, its reliance on its systems, its operating system, and pretty much have a box in your living room, just like a console, where you could play your Steam library of games, and that would be all it would do. I even thought about buying one of these as I was desperate to also try maybe like Minecraft mods and stuff, little not realising that Minecraft wasn't even available on Steam. But effectively, they failed. They failed because people still weren't going to be spending nearly double the amount on some of these machines when you had the consoles available. Xbox and PlayStation were just about to launch the PS4s and the Xbox Ones. Well, they had just done that, so why would you go and spend $800 or $900 on a Steam machine? The thinking obviously was that these machines you couldn't upgrade, you couldn't really change or mix about, so they would have a dead value just like a console does. Whereas your PC, you can upgrade over time, you can improve it and make adjustments. These machines were basically not that great either. They had multiple issues, whether or not they were hitting their frame rates, overheating, and basically they just weren't that great. The majority were sold through third-party sites in partnership with Steam, and so you had various degrees of people either jumping on the bandwagon that maybe shouldn't have been. But likewise, Steam probably didn't do enough to vet and make sure that their actual boxes and their licenses were going to maybe the right developers. And maybe the technology just wasn't there either. Some big manufacturers of PC games were involved. So it's hard to look at something like the Steam Deck and go, well, if they can't get a box running as a console, why am I going to trust them with a handheld? Surely this cannot play the kind of games that you've been mentioning. Well, according to all the demos and intents purposes, it does. I'll bet it's not going to ever be, as I said, that same fidelity as you get for an Ultra PC. But pretty decent for what is effectively a handheld console. We're so used to playing games on mobile now, a lot of you guys, and Switch is obviously the most popular console the last 2.5–3 years, in terms of new sales at least anyway. With cloud gaming on the rise, giving another distinct way to leverage and play some of the best and hottest, biggest games without needing the best technology. And seemingly with Steam and Microsoft's cozy relationship, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that we'll probably see something like Games Pass being available on the Steam Deck as well. I've tried to do this video without using too much technical jargon. I'm not going to go through the tech specs and list them all and explain every single component of it. This is purely for people like I was a good few years ago, not really knowing too much about PCs, not really understanding why it could be good to potentially have one over having just an Xbox or a PlayStation. The bottom line though is, for me, as a survival fan, as a content creator, PC is a must. There are so many games that you can try and play, so many different ones. If you're someone that only ever plays Ark or Conan anyway, then I don't think you necessarily ever will need a PC. And of course you do have mod support though, which is another compelling reason so many people do love PC kind of systems. But in general, if you're someone that doesn't like mods, I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying a brand new PC. But with its frequent sales, they're often much more reduced than other systems, they're cheaper, the games that you can buy. I think it's almost a no-brainer that if you are looking to get a console in the future, don't bother buying a PS5, don't bother buying an Xbox Series X or S. Try and save that money and get yourself a Steam Deck. I've bought 2 PS5s in the last year. I got one last year for launch to do reviews on it and check out the survival games, and I ended up giving it to my son for Christmas. With all the delays and all the games that are now going to be available on PS4 as well as PS5, I really haven't used it that much, and the exclusives that are on it I'm not a big fan of. Effectively, it's been a $500 waste. My Xbox Series X has got a bit more use. Again, I bought one and I bought a Series S for my kids, and they definitely have had a lot more use because of Games Pass, because I can try new stuff out for free, and they seem a bit more friendlier towards kids in terms of the choices and games that I like them playing or they like playing. But equally, they're still pretty expensive considering we've now got the cloud support coming to just your regular Xbox in the future. So yeah, that's just it. Like I said, it's not a sponsored video, I'm just trying to give you a heads up. There will be some issues with this. I'm sure we'll come into problems where maybe certain games won't run, or there might not be as good a performance as we kind of expect. But as I said, technology has moved on from them Steam machines. This is Steam's own actual systems, although they may be thinking about licensing it again to other people, so we will see maybe a choice or selection of these types of consoles or upgrades in the future. If $1,000, $1,200 is too much for you to consider maybe trying to build a new PC, you don't have the actual skills, the mindset to build your own, or you simply just don't like it, you don't have enough space to have a table, to have your monitors, to have the keyboard and everything else. If you want a family friendly kind of vibe going on, where your kids can pick up the system and play it, and you can all sit around the couch, then obviously that's the benefits of a console, and that's I think what Steam Deck will offer. So there we go. A bit of a weird one, like I said, I just thought I'd give my opinion about it. I should have maybe done this when it did come out, but I was pretty busy, and I did want to kind of see some more information and see how it's going. But everything I'm saying says it's looking okay. I've ordered one, I've ordered the cheapest one I could. It doesn't have all the fancy SSD because I wanted to show off the bare basics of it, or it's small anyway at least. And so I will be doing a review on this when I get it at some point in October, November, I guess. So look out for my channel then. I'll be showcasing what I can. I'll be running a bunch of the games and showing you how different they are. There is a waiting list on buying these now. You'll be lucky to try and get one, but it's definitely worth something considering. I do believe it could be even sort of May or June before you actually get a system now if you try ordering it, but you get the idea. I love survival games. As much as I rag out some of these games that are rubbish, poor, so many of them are so cheap, you don't really mind spending or gambling a tenner on seeing if something's pretty cool. And there are some great gems here that aren't going to make their way to consoles in the near future. And if you're particularly tired of consoles being treated pretty shabbily by some of these game makers, with not the right kind of ports like Rust recently, then yeah, maybe seriously think about the Steam Deck. Normal service will resume. More info about survival games themselves, more gameplay, more reviews and impressions. Until next time, Ratbags, I'll catch you later.